How will eclipse season affect you? In this video, we're breaking it down. We're going to go over the energy of the eclipse, the collective energies, and then we're going to break it down for each sign of the zodiac. Astrology readings are on sale right now for 50% off. The sale goes from October 10th through 21st. Click the link in the description to get yours. Now remember, eclipses come in pairs, so we know that this is going to be a time of change in those areas of life. Now, to understand what areas of life these are going to be for you personally, you're going to look to see what house in your chart Scorpio lands in. Anytime you have an eclipse in one house, you're also going to have another eclipse 2 weeks later in the opposite house. The other thing to know about eclipses is changes that happen in your life are not always happening on the day of the eclipse. Oftentimes, the eclipse is the precursor to tell you what area of life in the next 6 months is most likely to have the most profound changes. The solar eclipse in Scorpio is happening on the 25th of October. It's happening at 4:01 Pacific time, and it's happening at 2 degrees of Scorpio. So who will be most affected by this eclipse? Anyone with their sun, moon, or rising in Scorpio or Taurus. Anyone with their sun, moon, or rising in the other fixed signs of Leo or Aquarius, because that's going to be the square. You might also feel it if you have your sun, moon, or rising in the signs that trine Scorpio. Those are going to be the other water signs of Cancer or Pisces. Now, who's really going to feel it really strongly are people with their personal planets. That's the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, or Mars, or one of their angles. That's the ascendant, descendant, midheaven, or IC. The degree of the angle, close to that 2 degrees of Scorpio. 0 to, let's say, 7 degrees of Scorpio, roughly 26 degrees or higher of Libra. Personal planets that are either square or opposite those degrees. 0 to 6 or 7 degrees of Leo or Aquarius, 0 to 7 degrees of Taurus, which is opposite. That would be the opposition. 26 to 29 degrees of either Libra, Capricorn, Cancer, or Aries. So these are all the people that are going to feel it the most. If you have a personal planet at 2 degrees of Scorpio, that's going to be really, really strong as well. Definitely when the eclipse lands on a personal planet. Now, if the eclipse lands on something that is not a personal planet, it's not as strong. So if you have your North Node at 2 degrees Scorpio, or if you have your Pluto, or if you have your, let's say, your Jupiter, your Uranus, those ones aren't going to be as strong because those are not the personal planet. When eclipses or outer planets make an aspect to your personal planets, those are the real heavy hitters in terms of big life-changing transits. Let's move on to what this solar eclipse in Scorpio is going to bring for us. This solar eclipse in Scorpio, it is a solar eclipse, which means it's a new moon eclipse. The eclipse 2 weeks later will be a lunar eclipse. That means it's a full moon. So you can think of an eclipse as a very, very powerful new moon. There's solar or lunar eclipses. Solar are considered more of a new beginning. Lunar are considered more of an ending. The eclipse can fall on the north node or the south node. Having it be a south node eclipse, we are going to see a new beginning from the solar part and an ending from the south node part, because eclipses near the south node represent endings. So I think this eclipse season, because both eclipses are like that, whereas this solar eclipse in Scorpio is a new beginning, but it's with the south node, so there's going to be endings. And in 2 weeks, the lunar eclipse, which is more about what ends or what is released, that's going to be with the north node, where the north node represents new beginnings. So it's like we're going to get a little bit of both here. We're going to get changes in the axis this eclipse falls in your life that represent new beginnings and endings at the same time that can be initiated in the next 6 months. Reminder not to manifest during this solar eclipse. You can do whatever you want, but let me tell you why they say this, and then you can make an informed decision as an adult. Eclipses are known to be volatile. They're known to be difficult, and they are known to cause changes that we don't necessarily have control over. So if you set intentions with an eclipse, you don't know what negative thing might come with it. It's almost guaranteed that something bad or difficult or hard is going to also happen with it, because that is the nature of an eclipse. I am not saying you can't continue visualizing or working on creating the reality you desire, but when it comes to like sitting down, calling on the energy of the new moon and having a ceremony with candles and intentions and that kind of thing, it's not recommended to do that during eclipse season because of the volatile and difficult nature of eclipses. That is just a fact. So, keep visualizing, keep working on creating the future you desire and becoming the person you want to be 1000% always. But don't call on the energy for support during eclipse season. That is my professional opinion on that. That being said, let's talk about the energetic breakdown for this eclipse. The sun and moon will be at 2 degrees of Scorpio at the eclipse, while the south node is at 13 degrees. And then we have Venus at 2 degrees of Scorpio. Now, here's what sucks about this. In ancient astrology, if a planet is close to the sun, it's actually considered bad. The sun kind of burns it out. In other words, it kind of doesn't get to express itself. The sun sort of like takes over. Imagine if you're a little star and you're right next to the sun, you can't see it at all. It's kind of like that. And Venus is a planet we love. We feel good with Venus. So when we see an eclipse where Venus is burned out, we can almost guarantee that there will be something in the next 6 months, a change to that area of life that requires some kind of sacrifice, that requires something that burns out Venus. Venus rules love, beauty, enjoyment, enjoying the senses. It's also in Scorpio, where Venus doesn't want to be in Scorpio. This does not mean people with Venus and Scorpio are bad, but the ability to receive love, to enjoy the senses, when Venus is in Scorpio, it can't really do that as well, because Venus in Scorpio wants to, get down and dirty, unveil secrets and research and get to the bottom of things that you find in dark alleys. It's kind of unrefined, whereas Venus wants everything to feel good. And so with Venus in Scorpio in an eclipse, energetically, Venus is not going to be able to express its normal energy. We will encounter situations in our Scorpio house in the next 6 months where maybe we have to sacrifice. Maybe we don't get the normal, lovely things we would normally get. Maybe things are not as beautiful. Maybe we don't get the aesthetic we want in some way. Now this can be, I'll just give some specific examples of different ways this could show up in the world or in people's lives. Since Venus rules beauty or art, this could be something like you can't afford art or beauty in your budget. You no longer have a budget for music or for makeup. Or we run out of makeup collectively, or we run out of other things, like somehow people can't buy music for the 6 months, there's a crisis, or there's a crisis where we can't, artists have a problem and they can't sell their work, or, Venus also rules the senses. So this is things like, anything you put on your body, like lotions or oils, or again, makeup, or hair gel, or I'm trying to think of guys and include you guys too, or, soap, or anything we do to make ourselves lovely and presentable in the world, man or woman, that can be a challenge. Now that's kind of a stretch here, but this is like an extreme example of what could possibly happen in the next 6 months in your Scorpio house. There's going to be something at some point in the next 6 months that will probably require that. Now, another thing we do during an eclipse is we look at where is the ruler of the eclipse. This is a sign-based quincunx from Gemini to Scorpio. Now, it doesn't make aspect, so it's not an exact quincunx. We don't like quincunxes usually. They're uncomfortable. The two areas don't see eye to eye. We need to adjust in some way. We'll have to make adjustments that probably require us to sacrifice something. We might lose something that we enjoy. We have more than one aspect here that kind of shows us that things may not just be how we expect. There might be unexpected changes to our lives relating to, Saturn squaring Uranus is everything we've seen since the end of 2020, which is like the disruptions to the food supply, natural disasters. One of the things that happened the last time Saturn squared Uranus, this was when the power grid went out in Texas. Uranus rules electricity, sudden things. Saturn rules the things we depend upon. So changes to the things we depend upon is the energy of Saturn squaring Uranus. Another energy of Saturn squaring Uranus is tradition versus change versus. So it's like we can see this kind of politically where there's more and more tension between like conservatives and maybe progressives, for example. Black Moon Lilith, the true Lilith, makes a trine to this eclipse. With Lilith in Cancer, we will be in situations where we need to emotionally validate ourselves, where we don't necessarily get the emotional validation from the outside, or even the ways we naturally self-nurture could be rejected by people. With Lilith here, there's a potential for us to almost unleash another layer of our authentic selves. So it's almost like throughout all these changes in the next 6 months, we could become more of our true self. Maybe some of the things that are stripped away on some level could be things that we've been conditioned to believe that we have to have. But if you are, working on your own spiritual journey here with Lilith trining the eclipse, it makes me feel like we're not being Eve in this situation. We're being Lilith, right? So what does that mean? That means not submitting to things that are not authentic to you, not pretending and smiling because someone said you're a woman, you're supposed to smile, right? And this can apply to men too, where it's like not just going along to get along. Where is the most significant place in life emotionally for you to not submit? And by not submitting, and I'm not saying not submitting to the changes the universe is giving you or something. I'm saying not submitting to the fake stuff, the pretend emotion, the fake like, oh, it's nice to see you when you hate that person. Unless you're in a situation where you really need to do that. But the fake stuff where we're not honoring our own desires because we're afraid we're going to be rejected. Those things could be coming up, and there's a potential to see this with the Scorpionic energy and purge that next layer of that kind of energy we see in our lives. So now on to the different signs of the zodiac. You can watch your sun, moon, or rising, but know that your rising sign will be the most accurate when it comes to the external events happening. Your sun will be second, and moon is more on the emotional level. So starting with Aries. For Aries, this is happening in your 8th house of sex, death, and other people's money. So this is a new beginning on those kind of things. So for some, this can be a new beginning with your partner's income. If you are coupled, something changing with their job. That could be one way. For others, this is going to be more of a new beginning that requires some ending. So it's almost like some Aries are going to maybe pay off debt and then you have less debt, and that's a new beginning. Or, you're trying to get your credit score up, or you go into debt and now you're working on paying that off. So it's a new beginning. Remember, this eclipse will be a bit of a new beginning and an ending. And then in 2 weeks later, it'll hit that second house. So in the next 6 months, topics of money, topics of my money versus your money will be coming up. Topics of what I own versus what I'm selling, what I keep versus what I release in terms of the physical level of finances. Finances will be a theme probably. And other areas that can come into play with the 2nd and 8th house are sometimes things like inheritances or taxes or anything dealing with resources of other people. And that's what we have for the actual changes that are happening. As far as the energetic breakdown of this eclipse, Venus ruling your 7th house going into that 8th house makes me feel like some of you could have partners or good friends who invest in you in some way. or you might make investments with people. A lot of focus on what are you investing in with other people. Now that can be on the financial level, but perhaps this is also on an emotional level. Like, what risks are you taking with others? I'm not recommending financial risks. I don't do financial advice or anything, but those are the things that I would see coming up in the next 6 months. For those that money is not really on the radar right now, this can show up more in your transformation, where something related to a partner, it's like you guys do a transformational course together or other transformational experiences. Remember, the 8th house also rules psychology. And I think of it as like when we expand our awareness, right? So you are here by the time this eclipse season ends. You will be here in some way. So that's what I have for Aries. Moving on now to Taurus. For Taurus, this is happening in your 7th house of partnerships. So massive changes to relationships. Now, for some Taurus, this will be the very simple explanation of like new beginnings in relationship or breakups. But there's more nuance here. You can have an eclipse in your 7th house and not break up with someone or not get into a relationship. It can just be changes to those areas. For those who are single and that's not really on the radar, it can also be changes to your friendships, where the thing ruled by the 7th house could be eclipsed out of your life. And because Venus rules your 6th house of diet, of daily routines, it could be something like your partners, changes between you, your significant others, or your friends when it comes to your daily routine. So you have more time with your friends, you have less time with your friends. Also keep in mind that when the eclipses are on that 7th and 1st house axis, it's also going to be your 1st house too, right? In 2 weeks, that lunar eclipse is going to hit that 1st house. So what that means is bigger changes, bigger life changes, such as moving, such as new jobs, again, such as changes to relationships or changes to friendships, big life changes happening whenever the eclipses land in your sign and the opposite sign. So, Taurus and Scorpios, you guys, this is your time to see bigger life changes. So that's what I have for Taurus. Let me know in a comment below if it resonates, and we'll move on now to Gemini. For Gemini, sun, moon, or rising, this is happening in your 6th house of daily habits, daily routine, and work. Having an eclipse in your 6th house does really scream job changes, like changes to the work schedule you have, what you do every day, what your role is. And keep in mind, because it's a solar eclipse, there is a potential new beginning, but also some kind of potential ending as well, especially when it's in that 6th house, because the 6th house is one of the houses in the chart that represents loss or endings. And, Venus ruling that 5th house. For some, this could be an ending to a creative activity and a beginning of different kinds of work. For others, this could be a time where you start doing work like apprenticeship type work, whether you are apprentice or not. I think of people who are like just starting a YouTube channel or just starting some other kind of creative passion, where with that 6th house being highlighted, usually the 6th house is not where we get the results. It's where we put in a lot of work. Some of you might have to do more. You might just have to do more during this time, taking care of a sick relative or other stuff like that comes up. And because it rules your 5th house, maybe doing more, for those who have kids, doing more related to your children. For those who don't have kids, doing more related to someone you're dating, or doing more related to other 5th house things. Now, there's other things that go in the 5th house, like gambling, pleasure, entertainment. So those in any kind of industry that rules entertainment, that could just be your work. And for anyone else, it's probably not going to be all of those things. Usually it's just one of the significations. So more work to be done. That doesn't always have to be a horrible thing either, Geminis. This can be like where you're putting in the work to create your passion. And, also keep in mind that we'll talk more about the 12th house in the next video. But when an eclipse happens, it's going to affect both houses. So your 6th house of work, your health, your daily routine, and your 12th house of isolation, the subconscious mind, dreams, having time out. Sometimes when a 12th house transit happens like this can be like you need time out for recovery of some sort. So the kind of recovery totally depends. It can be a physical recovery from an injury. It could be a emotional or mental recovery from an addiction, those kind of things. And sometimes it's not even you. Sometimes it's somebody else in your life who those themes are coming up, like helping someone every day who's getting sober or something like that. So keep in mind, it's a general reading, and comment below if it resonates, and we'll move on now to Cancer. For Cancers, this is happening in your 5th house of fun, pleasure, kids, gambling, self-expression, creativity. So this is also like entertainment, anything you do for fun. So an eclipse in your fun house, one of the potential things is there's going to be a change to how you enjoy life, how you experience pleasure. Venus being your 4th house ruler, it really is going to affect your home. And what you do at home versus what you don't do at home as far as entertainment. This could be something as simple as like watching movies at home now instead of at the theater, or other stuff like that. It can go the other way, where now it's time to get out and go entertain yourself outside of the home. Other 5th house transits are changes to your children, changes to who you're dating, changes to, again, pleasure, how you receive pleasure. With Venus there, this feels like probably a decrease. Now, some of you could be like, I need to rein in my entertainment, and you're it's conscious, and you're choosing not to spend as much time watching TV. For others, it's like your TV breaks or something, and fill in the blank with what makes sense for you in terms of what you normally do to kick back and relax. What kinds of activities you normally do when you have leisure time. For everyone, that's going to be different. But that's really the big deal here. Now, again, that 4th house ruler in the 5th house really does make it feel like, for some of you, it could be something like being in a new relationship and they really love watching a certain show. So now you watch that show. Or, getting out of a relationship where they only listen to country music and now you get to listen to whatever you want. It could be that simple, or it can be bigger stuff, just depending on how it's hitting your chart. Again, on changes related to your kids. Now, the 4th house and 5th house to me really does feel like family a lot, because the 5th, for those of you with kids, definitely something related to family. For those of you who don't have kids, it's more that 5th house is also more like who we are, our own self-expression. For some Cancers, it may be something where your self-expression is not quite as enjoyable, or almost like you get a job where you can't wear your hair the way you like to wear it. Things like this. And again, fill in the blank with what it relates to in terms of your life, where you have to make some sacrifice in terms of your self-expression. Another way this could show up is if you're like an actor, or you're like putting out any kind of work that's creative in the world, and you have to censor yourself just a little bit in order to make good content, right? So this would be me, right? Not coming on here saying whatever I want, but doing it in the format that people want to watch it in, right? Because if nobody wants to consume it, well, there's like that age-old question of the artist, of why we make art. But basically, for Cancers, this could show up as, again, needing to somehow let go of something related to your self-expression that maybe you enjoy for a time. So keep that in mind, and you can come to the next eclipse video if you want to know how the Taurus eclipse is going to affect you as well. Moving on now to Leos. For Leos, this is happening in your 4th house of home, roots, and emotional security. So for Leos, the kind of changes we could see is being home more, being home less. Big changes in terms of buying or selling homes. Real estate can come under play as far as changes in that area. And again, work-life balance, how much time you spend at home versus at work, or vice versa. Changes that are slightly destabilizing in those areas of life. Venus ruling your 3rd house in that 4th house, and making a conjunction to this eclipse really tells me that maybe your communication is under focus as well. Something about communicating from home, especially for those of you who work from home, or communicating more at home. Like even if you're like with your kids, like talking to them more or working on communication styles or changing how you communicate when you're at home. That's like one of the biggest focuses here. There could also be a focus on having relatives just because the third house rules siblings. It also rules our aunts and uncles and cousins. So for some Leo risings, you guys could have like extended family or siblings in your home more often. You could be hosting more parties, or the other way around where you're spending time or energy at your siblings' homes or things like that. But from an energetic or evolutionary perspective, this eclipse will be about, and some Leos, it might have to do with your transportation, because what you drive, your cars and stuff goes in that third house as well. So like, I don't know, some Leos might have some changes to how many cars you have, whether you have a car or don't have a car, and like how you get from home to other places. That might change. So again, from the energetic perspective for Leos, this is going to be more about communication and the mind, and possibly calming the mind as well, because the third house is like our thoughts that we think, and the fourth house is how we feel about who we are. So you may be putting more focus on like entraining your nervous system, or learning how to connect those thoughts to the body and regulate the nervous system, that kind of stuff. There just may be focus on those kind of things as well for Leo. So moving on now to Virgos. For Virgos, this is happening in your third house of communication, the mind, transportation. This is also your short day-to-day trips, your neighbors, your siblings, and sometimes your aunts and uncles and cousins. So it's also how you communicate, but usually the short bursts of communication. This is not like writing a novel. It's more like how you talk to people on an everyday level, or for people who do repeated communications, like if you write a column every week, or you write a newsletter every week, or you're marketing every day. Those kind of things also are going to fall under this house. So there's changes to this area, changes to how you market if you have your own business. Definitely with that second ruler in that third house conjunct the eclipse, it's going to bring up what you invest into your communication, what you invest into third house things. So are you investing time or money into being a better communicator right now? Are you maybe investing more time or money into your car? Are you investing into like maybe saving up to buy a new car or fixing a car that you already have? This can also be changes to how you think about things, but it's with Venus there, it's really about wanting to invest in that, wanting to spend money on third house stuff. Some of you might be loaning money to a sibling. Some of you might be really trying to invest into spending more time learning something. You could be taking little classes. This would not be like getting a PhD, but like taking any other kind of courses or classes. Other ways this could show up with that third house. It's putting money and time into third house things. Your mind, your mindset, your thoughts, what you know, how you communicate what you know. Speaking could be a focus. You could be investing into speaking. You could be spending money to practice speaking more. Things like that. But expect major changes in that third house of either transportation, communication, siblings. For some Virgos, this will just affect a sibling, a change to a sibling, and that's it. That's all you're going to see. For others, it'll be more of what you are putting money into on a personal level. And that's really what I see for Virgos here, is investing into, and for some it'll be like, yay, I want to invest, I've saved up. And for others, it'll be like, oh shit, my car got broke, I got to fix it. Or investing, also, you could be moving. With this transit, you could be investing into a new neighborhood, right? Because the third house is our neighbors. Even though the fourth house is our home, we do see moving when I see that second ruler, that money planet in your third house of home, you might be deciding you want to live somewhere else, or investing in finding the right community to live in, or, making changes to your neighborhood, or making changes to the home that you have, or meeting your neighbors, or other things like that. So that is what I have for Virgos. Let me know in a comment below if it resonates. And moving on now to Libra. For Libras, this is happening in your second house of money, and you have your first house ruler Venus in that second house. So this is a really strong transit for you for a money transit, right? So changes to income, changes to how you make money. This could be something like a job loss and you get a new one. Because it's a solar eclipse, so there's new beginnings in money, but it's also with the South Node. So there's something that has to be released. So for some Libras, you might be letting go of certain belongings. You might be considering almost like, who am I and what do I need to have to be the person that I want to be, kind of a thing, because it ties up your identity into what you own with this eclipse. So it's like maybe letting go of things to have a new identity, or having something, some kind of loss of a possession of some kind that then makes you realize who you are in a way. So there's something going on here with these two areas. Or it could go the other way where it's like, I upgraded all these things because I am this kind of person, that kind of stuff. So it does tie in your finances with your identity. And there can be some kind of change, major change that opens up a new beginning. And it's almost like it might all happen at the same time. And it really is like a classic job change, because it's like, now I stopped doing this job and started doing this one, or I stopped doing this kind of work, started doing this kind of work. And that might feel subjectively positive or negative, just depending on a bunch of other things, right? For some, it might be an upgrade. For others, it might be more of a loss, but it doesn't feel like it's simply like easy. It feels like there will be something that needs to be released here in order to allow that next thing to open up. And it also, that eclipse in 2 weeks is going to be that 8th house of other people's money. So you may end up feeling that one as well, where it's changes to what you're receiving, especially if you are a Libra who is actively receiving income from another person in some way or another, or you have your finances tied up with other people like partners or spouses or anyone else besides you. That could come under play too during this eclipse season. And remember, this cycle is 6 months, so the changes may not be happening overnight. So moving on now to the next sign, which is Scorpio. Scorpios, this is happening in your first house, meaning it's a major change for you, major new beginnings, and some possibly major endings, especially since Venus rules your 12th house. And the 12th house is one we typically see as representing losses of certain kinds, letting go of things, releasing things. So there's strong purging energy here with this eclipse for you guys of releasing things. Now, this can be, for some, it can be relationships, where even though it's your first house of your identity, the eclipse 2 weeks later is going to be in your 7th house of partnership. So it's like, what are you letting go of and beginning when it comes to partnership? For those who are not coupled, it still can be, what are you letting go of and releasing in terms of friendships, long-term friendships, the people you are around, especially those people you connect with on a one-on-one level. What are you releasing in terms of your own identity? What aspect of your identity is changing? This can be major changes like job changes, moves, anything that's like when someone asks you, when you first meet someone and they ask you who you are, or what you do or where you live, those defining questions, those defining parts. Now, we are who we are beyond where we live and what we do, but that first house is those major life changes of job, location, usually those two, job, location, and relationship. So you can expect something in those areas to change at this time. So for Scorpios, I definitely see, major endings and beginnings that are life changing at this time. And keep in mind that they may not initiate until sometime in the next 6 months. So that is what I have for you guys. You're going to feel it more strongly too if your rising for Scorpios is like in the early degrees. So I would say up to about 7 degrees. That's going to hit you a lot stronger on this one. So that's what we have for Scorpios. Moving on now to the next sign, which is Sagittarius. Okay, so for Sagittarius, this is happening in your 12th house of isolation. So having an eclipse in your 12th house can be some kind of major ending, right? The 12th house represents major endings. Now, these major endings can be more or less dramatic. So examples of 12th house endings is you lose something. Usually you lose something with the 12th house eclipse. At best, you go get sober. Like at best, you recover from something you needed to recover from. Sometimes you can face deep fears. You can face things like you can get sober. You can face a bad habit, an invisible illness of any kind, whether it's a addiction, whether it's even a mental illness. Sometimes that can happen. I'm not diagnosing anyone with this, but sometimes we can see those psychological motivations, or we can see the consequences of the things that we don't necessarily easily face on a day-to-day time. So I'm not going to say this will be easy for Sagittarius, just because usually eclipses represent loss or facing things. And that 11th house ruler, Venus, rules your hopes and dreams, and it rules friendships and groups of people. So some Sagittarius may end up leaving certain groups of people they no longer resonate with. They may need to face that they don't fit in where they are or something. There may be something happening with a group of people that really shows you something you didn't see before, because the 12th house also rules hidden enemies we don't see. And having that 11th ruler there, I don't like this, guys. I don't like this, Sagittarius, because it's almost like a hidden enemy. It's like something could happen with a hidden enemy that tries to sabotage you or something. I hate making predictions about this. So let's talk about what potential positive things can happen here with this eclipse. The positive potential of a 12th house eclipse has to do with, again, being able to see what things that psychologically motivated you that maybe were too painful to see before, sometimes because of something that manifests. Also, the 12th house can be isolation. So if you've wanted to take a vacation. So for some Sagittariuses who have had hopes and dreams that relate to the 12th house of meditation, archetypes, symbols, dreams, Jungian psychology, or things like the Akashic records, or things like, what else am I thinking about? Astral travel, or like, what's the other one? Lucid dreaming, things like that. There can be some kind of focus or change with those kind of things for people, especially if you have a planet at that point, Sagittarius. And also keep in mind that the eclipse fall in the next 2 weeks will be in your 6th house. So oftentimes with 12th house stuff, it's going to bring up changes to how much time we spend invested in our daily life, aka working out with our daily habits on our routines, versus how much time we spend out of that daily life. So sometimes a strong eclipse in the 12th house will take you out of your daily routine, again, through a vacation, through a long trip, through a pilgrimage of spiritual seeking, through even something like when you end up going, there's negative ones too, right? So like some people go to jail, some people go to treatment. Some people have those kind of things happen because what they all represent is being taken from your regular, everyday, day-to-day life and having to go out of it, and that routine being disrupted. So at some point during this next 6 months, you could see some kind of themes like that happening. Again, with Venus ruling that 11th house with the eclipse, this is going to also bring changes maybe to your hopes and dreams, maybe to how you accomplish your dreams. Maybe you will realize that a dream you had you're not quite on track for, or even like more about your subconscious motivations for a dream that you had that causes you to adjust how you approach your daily schedule and realize, sometimes we realize that we have a dream and then we realize later we just wanted the attention, or as we get closer and we get the experience, then we go, I don't even like this. Why did I want this? I thought it was going to make me happy. Maybe some Sagittarius can have some kind of like come to Jesus moment where you're like, holy shit, this thing I thought I wanted is stupid and I hate it. And then, even though that moment doesn't feel good, by facing that, then there's an ability to go, okay, well, then if that's true, what do I want? And, get on track for doing the things in the day-to-day life that are going to build that future you do want. Now, that's just one possible way this can manifest for Sagittarius. It's not the only way. There's a lot of different potentials of a 12th house transit. Most of them are challenging, I'm not going to lie. So it may be a time to surrender to the path to your dreams as well. That could also show up for Sagittarius. Moving on now to Capricorns. For Capricorns, this is happening in your 11th house of hopes and dreams. And so we can see changes. And also, this is your friends, the groups of people you hang out with that are your friends or that are acquaintances. So for Capricorns, we can see big changes like endings and new beginnings with what your hopes and dreams are. Some of you may finish a certain dream and now it's time to go to the next dream. Like you've gotten to a level. Now it's time to figure out, well, what's the next level after this? For others, it may be, maybe you've reached a level where it's like, oh, that dream that I thought I wanted, that goal that I was reaching for, now I'm close to it. It's not manifesting. You know, I've done everything I can and it still hasn't manifested. So now it's time to surrender, let it go, and move on. Another way this can show up is just focusing on claiming and going after the things you really, truly want. And with that 10th house ruler in the 11th, this may be a time where you're sharing your work with more people, you're being more visible, or you're getting more attention, more public recognition for the work that you've already done. It could be time to like kind of put yourself in the limelight and feature your own work if you're in that stage. If you're not in that stage, it might be a time where you spend more time with your friends, or you're working with friends, or you're working in groups more, doing group projects, speaking, those kind of things go in the 11th house. If it's speaking to a group of people or like leading a group or attending more work meetings, even can be how that shows up. But on the energetic level, Capricorns are going to see changes where they are releasing something related to your big hopes and dreams and maybe starting something new. It's like when you go for a new dream, you don't have, you gotta, how do I put it? For some Capricorns, this will be totally cool, not super emotional, and just simply like time to go for that next thing. For most, there'll be something that needs to be released to get to that next level. And so it's about being willing to let that go. So moving on now to Aquarius. For Aquarius, this is happening in your 10th house of career. It's a major change to your job, your work, maybe even your work-life balance. And with that 9th house ruler in the 10th house, this can be 9th house stuff happening in your career that has major changes. So some 9th house things are like the meaning of life. You could feel like your work is more meaningful. You could let go of a certain kind of meaningful work and be doing other work, or the other way around where you stop doing work that wasn't meaningful and you start doing work that is more meaningful. This can bring in more 9th house things like long-term studying, or almost like you get a job because of your education kind of a thing. Now you're ready, now you're educated, now you've done the work to learn what you need to learn to have that next step. For others, that 9th house topic could be the law. It could be the law or travel. Traveling for work could also be a theme. Keep in mind that the next eclipse in 2 weeks will affect that 4th house of home. So work-life balance, how much time you spend publicly versus privately. There'll be major changes, endings and new beginnings in those areas. So that is what I have for Aquarius. Let me know in a comment below if it resonated. I'll see you guys in the next video. For Pisces, this is happening in your 9th house of the meaning of life and what you believe. Major changes to your beliefs. Now, for some, this will show up in other 9th house stuff like astrology, like learning about religions, philosophy, travel, the law, the meaning of life. I think I said that. Those things could be changing. Big endings and big new beginnings and what you find meaningful, or how much time you're able to spend on what you find meaningful. And because this is affecting your 9th and 3rd house axis, there might also be focus on how you communicate what you know, or whether you know enough to communicate, learning and then sharing what you know and being able to do those things. So for some Pisces, it'll be taking new courses to do that next level of learning, like you've ended one level, now you're ready for another one. For others, it might be like now the course is over and it's time to apply it to life, kind of a thing. But with that 8th house ruler in the 9th house, I would not be surprised if in the next 6 months, Pisces and Pisces risings are like investing even into their long-term education, or paying back debt for loans they already took out, or 8th house is also like other people's money. Some of you could have a partner who invests in you learning something. Lots of money, focus on like entanglements with other people and the meaning of life, and pursuing those dreams, those educational dreams, those philosophical dreams in terms of like what you want to know. So that is what I have for Pisces. You guys let me know in a comment below if that is accurate. And don't forget that I'm having a 50% off sale right now. It's starting on October 10th, going through the 21st. So you can click the link below to get in on that. And if you want to know more about eclipses, check out this video I made that helps break down some of the basic things that are true about every eclipse, so you'll be more ready for the eclipse seasons that we see in the future. They do happen every 6 months.